Hello and welcome to Medals and Mics with me, Derval O'Rourke.
With me, David Gillick.
Myself, Rob Heffernan.
This podcast looks inside the life of us trying to be our best on a global stage.
Like all great journeys, it didn't always go to plan, yet the lessons learned can be applied to everyday life.
Every week we'll talk about winning major medals, Olympic Games, new challenges, our sporting careers and everything in between. Enjoy listening.
Thanks for being here.
We hope you enjoy listening. I think sometimes from the outside, and you look at the medals that you've both won, people always have this, I don't know, always have it, but they have a perception that it was just always a kind of a straight road to the medal and, you know, the work that went into it. But because I've seen you both throughout your careers at different times when things haven't gone that well. I'll start, Rob, we'll start with yourself. Like, is there any one moment or, like, whether you term it failure, a setback, or just even the difficulty of slogging yourself and getting there, and that relentless kind of non-stop to get where you want to go?
I feel, if you look historically, and I've seen this as far back, with the big hype around every Olympic Games, massive hype around the Olympic Games, you look at the age of the athletes and the Irish team. So I really genuinely feel that most of us, when you have that innate hunger and your body is developing up to 21, 22, you're going to get better every single year anyway, by default. Loads of the muck will stick. And then the next thing, you hit 23. How many athletes do we have in their late 20s in Ireland, historically? You know, if you get them to 23 and then you can pile on the 5 years then of more strength, more speed, more of everything, you're so rock solid by the time you're into your late 20s. But we miss so many athletes getting them through them windows. So I always feel like I went to Sydney, finished 28. I went to the World Championships the next year, went away with Robert, did all of that learning, finished 14th. And Robert said, you know, that's not your potential. He called me out on what my potential was. Whereas at home, I was like going, you were great. Yeah. Went to the European Championships the next year, 2002, and I missed the medal by 11 seconds. So the trajectory was all really good, breaking Irish records every single year. 2003, but I felt I could do anything. You know, I could still socialise, I could still... Well, there still wasn't a massive plan there. You could go out, you could train, you're young, you're invincible. And when you're the best in the history in your event at home, who's going to call you out? Do you know?
Did you believe the hype though? If people are telling you you're great, it's very easy to kind of settle into that.
I didn't, but I enjoyed myself as well. Like I suppose a lot of it still comes back down to finances. I was putting myself away in all of these camps. Like, I can remember even going to Edmonton in 2001. The Irish team were going out there like 2 or 3 days before the World Championships, and Korjanowski was coaching me, helping me at the time. I said, you need to be out there. He said, Edmonton's at altitude. And I jumped on a plane and went to Edmonton and met a Canadian on the plane, had no plan when I got there, gave myself 10 days to go out there to train, and I ended up staying in his house. So I'd have been very resourceful, like, and I did, ended up chatting to him on the plane. And he says, hey man, he says, where are you from? And I said, so I'm from Ireland. He goes, hey, I'm Irish as well. And I'm there on my head going, is this fella for real? He's Irish.
Didn't stop you though, did it?
But then he goes, what are you doing? He was from Newfoundland. So all of the Irish went to Newfoundland. I said, I'm competing in the World Championships in Edmonton. And so we're chatting away. And I said, will I get a hotel when I arrive in? Handy enough. And he says, hey man, you could come and you could stay with me. I was like, what fuck, man, this fella could be a serial killer, like. So I pretended to go to sleep then, and I got to the airport.
I have no idea.
Got to the airport, and I get my baggage, and he came back, and I'm at the carousel, and he goes, man, I was just speaking to my wife. He says, you could come and stay with us. And I was like, I know where to stay. So ended up staying with him. It was lovely. Ken Frenette was his name. What a lovely man. What a lovely family. And the young fella Steve used to come out with me every day in the bike, doing my video work. I used to eat there, did everything. And I got all of them then to the closing ceremony of the World Championships. But I was coming up, finished 14th there, 8th at the Europeans. So I was coming through. But I had no money, Dave. I can remember being in Salzburg in 2002, stone broke. My Visa card is maxed. And then I ended up getting injured. 2003, injured for the World Championships in Paris. And Gillian O'Sullivan, who jumped on the plane with me to go to South Africa, she won a medal there.
Yeah, I remember.
You know, but she was a lot more organised. Yeah. She was smart girl, and she maximised all the windows, whereas I was a bit more free. 2003, 2004, I was disqualified in the Olympic Games, which was a disaster. Now I'm going to be thrown off funding. 2005, then in Helsinki, this was probably massive low point for me. I'm in 7th position there,
This
right?
is World Champs.
World Champs in Helsinki. I'm in 7th position World Championships. My Visa card is maxed. I have a massive credit union loan. When you have no money, massive is like $4,000.
100%, yeah.
And I'm in the race in 7th position going, right, if I finish here, my grant will go up to 20 grand. Get 8 grand for a coach. I'll get prize money. So I was going to, straight away, is going to be about 35 grand richer. And I was like, I pay my Visa card off, can pay this off. Now I can start planning my year. I can start planning like Robert. And I got disqualified. 2.5K to go. I was disqualified in 7th position. And I was devastated. So coming back from that, I remember staying in my sister's mobile home in Redburn in Youghal. I used to be out on the beach crying at night time. I'd go over. No, it was really bad. Really,
I know,
really
well,
bad.
Laugh at that.
I'm just-
The fella's talking about opening up
Yeah.
here and you're laughing at him.
It was, and I ended up like from a life where I thought, you know, that I was going to have a good life. I was back working with my brother on a building site, doing days there. I was doing some Saturdays with my brother-in-law delivering coal.
And where was walking at that moment of time?
I ended up in Helsinki unknowns to myself, so the window was going up. I had a double hernia in the competition, so it probably led to me the disqualification as well, because my technique mightn't been strong enough because of my core, and it was tough. So I missed 2005, missed 2006. I had no money. Back doing a bit of work. Marion was working for us. Me and Carl was only a baby at home. Megan was a baby. Like, it was a really, really tough time. Really tough time.
Did you still, to yourself, call yourself like an athlete, a walker? Or
No,
were
I felt like muck. Like only for Marion. When I met her at the start when I was injured, she was like going, you know, you're great. And I was like, fuck it, this is great, man. She thinks I'm unreal. Trying to score with her, like, I used to think Marion was unreal. And she was, it was great, but it was all fake because I felt like absolute muck underneath it all. I had nothing going for me. I was injured. I was a failure. And she built me back up, like, and she built me to push, to go and get what the injury was sorted out. She says, people think you're great. You know, everyone admires you. And it was massive for my own confidence. And she stood by me, like, so if only for her, I'd never ever getting back. And I ended up going to Johnson McAvoy in Limerick and found out that I had a hernia. And then I kind of had a second coming after that. But there were bleak years because you're gone from funding.
Yeah.
You have no money. This life of being at the Olympics and Worlds and Europeans, being on TV, being exposed to all of that, it's completely fake if it's not managed right, like. And it's really, really dangerous, like, you know.
But it would have been very easy just to retire from athletics and...
Yeah, but for me then, like, it comes back, like, about that sense of responsibility, like when you pulled everything back and you put everything on the table, okay, what were my positive attributes? What was I doing right? What was I doing wrong? And there was so many things that I was doing wrong. Yeah. There was so many things. If I was adding value to my programme like Robert and I was still in 7th position in the World Championships, and I was like, imagine if I could add these things. So I always believed if I could get back that I was good enough. But a lot of it is money and finance, like. But they were very, very dark years. They were really tough years, you know.
But the mindset there, though, to persevere and keep going, and that kind of innate belief that you had. Do you know what I mean? A lot of other people might have said, I'm done with this. You know, like, there's a bit
But there's nothing else to me, though, Dave, you know? Like, when I look back now, like, my kids have a very different upbringing.
Yeah.
You know, but there was nothing else for me. That was it. It was my whole identity, which is not good either, because when it falls, when it doesn't go well, you're completely worthless, like, you know, and it's hard. And I went through really, really tough times. I remember living in an apartment inside in town in 2000 and going like, you know, what's the point of it all? And you're going to die anyway, you know? And genuinely lying there going, you know, what's it all for? And then everybody was gone. All of the people were gone and you're left on your own. That really, really tough times for a young fella. And I know I was 23, 24, but I was a young 23, 24 with very little guidance, left on my own, broke into a new world. And then when it was gone, it was complete carnage for me, to be honest, like, you know.
It's a struggle, like, and again, in the world of sport, it can be hard for people outside of that world to relate to the highs and the lows, particularly the lows. Like, you know, there are a lot, because I remember, was it 07 was one, was it Osaka
Osaka was brutal, yeah.
that year. But again, in your own kind of journey, like what moments and, obviously the success, we all know medals and stuff like that, but like there's been a few struggles along the way.
Oh, loads of struggles. And by the way, the reason that makes me laugh, not because I think the misery was hilarious, because the misery was never hilarious. I was there for a lot of it with you. I would have seen a lot of it. But it's just so many of the stories of you being in a mobile home or a caravan in Youghal.
And that's where we went on holidays.
Exactly.
So you're drawn back down
there's
there.
a lot of stories about Youghal that go a different direction. So when you're telling the story of crying in Youghal, I'm also thinking like Youghal is a place that has many different facets to it for you
back down there too,
in
yeah.
your life. But okay, so, and I would touch on some of what Rob would say. So this is
Being grounded, isn't it? By the sea and...
I love it. Yeah,
You
it's
know?
very calming. So for the failure part, right? This is what I think I failed to understand at the start of my career. That when you fail when you're young, right, at the start of your career, you fail at a championship, it doesn't go well, you're embarrassed. The consequences become bigger. So for me, when I was at the start of the career, I suppose I felt like I was invested myself, right, in terms of like I was making decisions to like go after this athletics life and this sports life, to have a career in sports. I didn't have any major sponsors. My funding was small, so I never felt a sense of it's the word I'm looking for, like responsibility or ownership to anybody really, because I was like, oh, I'm the main one putting an effort in here, and But then what would have happened to me, and you're talking about like those times that you would remember when things were going badly for me, I would have had fairly big sponsorship deal, right? A fairly big sponsorship deal, which was absolutely game changing in my career. Then I would have had a car, I would have had a sponsor car. I mean, I know you've been through all of this. Then I would have had a kit sponsor, you would have had a kit sponsor, and I would have had funding, right? So those four things, and when you're performing well at the level I guess the three of us were at some of the time when you're winning medals, they're the type of things that become part of the picture. They become on the table. So that financial side and that kind of business side to the sport is not relevant when you're young. Because let's be honest, when you're jumping on a plane, you're staying in some random lad's house in Canada. Like, there's no business side.
No.
When I was a kid and I'm getting the train to Dublin, and then when I went to Athens, there's no business. My first Olympics, there's no business side to my sport. It's all a complete hobby. I'm trying to be professional, but essentially it's a hobby. But it goes from being a hobby to being a business. And when it becomes that, I remember in the space of 1 week being told my funding was being cut by 75%. My main sponsor was gone. Quick phone call, 2 minutes. So a 3-year relationship was done in 2 minutes. Next phone call was the car needed to be dropped back. So then I was going, am I going to get the bus after I dropped the car? And the final phone call was I'd have no kit sponsor for the next year. So I went from being someone who was a world champion to going, and all of that created a sense of my value, and all these people were invested in me and they'd all decided to pull their investment. So now my value to them, my performance value to them was zero. And so I'd already had the bad actual on-track performances. And then
it's compounded now.
It was absolutely compounded. I will never forget career during my athletics. It was the worst few days because it was
and when was that, roughly? When was?
After my second Olympics, 2008, and it was that December. So just coming into Christmas, when people are trying to tidy up their business accounts and remove the fat and the things that are the dead wood, and it was so funnily, right? It was awful, right? It was awful. I remember, and I felt so bad about myself as it was. I felt like I had no value anyway. So these decisions, which were only business, they were never personal as well. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
And someone
you don't understand that at the time. No.
So someone asked me this recently, what would you change in your career? What would you change about what you did? And I said I would change that I thought business decisions are personal decisions.
Yeah.
Like every time my funding got cut, I thought they were cutting me as a person. They were telling me as a person, this is your value. You're not good enough.
Yeah.
So when my sponsor, that main sponsor left, I thought they were saying, well, we want the new shine. It was just a business. They're all just business decisions, but you don't understand that when it's your life. And when you're in the middle, it's very hard to have context on it and to just put it in perspective. So anyway, that all happened. So I was incredibly low, and just going, do I continue? And differently to you, I wasn't thinking that there's no other option. And I was thinking actually that the other options are better. Like I could just get a job, like a normal job. I don't know what that job would be, but I could figure out a normal job. I was thinking...
I felt like that I had unfinished business. That was why there was no other option.
Yeah.
Because I had to I had to come back because I knew I could be better.
And I had won. So at that stage, I had won. When all of that happened to me and everyone, basically in the middle of my career, from a business context and from an investment context, everyone stepped off that bus for me in the middle of my career. And I had been world champion and I'd won a European outdoor silver. But what happened to me when everyone stepped off the bus was I was really down for about a week, like really down. And then I went, actually, I only am doing this now for myself. There's no pressure. Nobody expects anything. And if anything, I became much more dangerous as a competitor because the shackles were off. It was like, I don't have a sponsor who I think is going to be disappointed. You know, from a taxpayer funding perspective, I'm on such a small amount of funding now. I deserve the little amount that I'm on. It was little, but I deserved that. And I just bought a little car. I don't have to get the bus. I have a little car now that I've paid for myself out of my savings. And I knew that financially I had 2 years, that I could continue for 2 more years financially and chase it if I wanted to. So what it did remove, it removed any pressure, it removed any stress, and it meant I took back complete ownership. So I felt a bit, and this is planning for success or fearing failure, I think. I probably didn't plan for success in the terms of the external people that get involved. And that, did you?
Well, I remember you ringing me after your win in 2006 in the World Indoors.
Go on, I don't remember.
You rang me, it must have been, I'd say it was like 4 days after we came back.
Okay.
And you were stressed.
Yeah, I was crying.
Yeah, and you literally, you hadn't prepared for success. No. You didn't know what to do in the aftermath of a successful championship.
No.
It was almost like you were ringing injured, or as if you came last in that race. And you had people coming at you, you had all this noise, suddenly people wanted to have a piece of you.
Yeah.
And you were stressed out.
And
I always remember that.
But was there anybody looking after that for you?
No, I don't think you had.
You see,
at that moment of time, you didn't.
It's a lot to navigate on your own. And when I see athletes going through it now, who come through, who we have a few stars now, and I feel like going, leave them alone. Like there's vultures out there who'll just clutch and when you're thrown in it from such a solitude,
well, life being in the lines,
it's so exciting as well.
Of course it is.
But it's all a game.
It's all a game, and the problem is that can happen, and suddenly you feel like, oh, I need to perform for that person.
For that.
I need to perform.
It's just pure lack of education, though, of that environment.
It's a world that's
guidance.
Probably unregulated in many ways.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's very much like you're fresh meat.
Yeah,
you know, you come out with a championship with a medal, and people are going, boom, right, all over you, all over you.
You're being pimped out by whoever.
And I didn't. So by the time those phone calls came with everyone getting off the bus, I had gone through. So after I rang you, that would have been a year and a half. So it would have been a year and a half after that. So I think very quickly, I would have been out of my depth in how to manage the non-performance side. But what happened is the non-performance side, the business side, started affecting the performance. And I got really injured. I got a really bad fracture in my back, which I still have to deal with to this day. And it took every external third party getting off the bus for me to love the sport again, to back myself and go, I'll never feel like that again. Like I will never feel that weight of pressure. And within 9 months of that, I was back running faster than I'd ever ran. I was 4th in the world. I was back winning European medals, and I came back, and like that's why I would say there was like 2 halves of my career. You know, the first half getting to a peak of becoming a world champion, the second half navigating that, and then like the comeback from that, comeback from navigating and struggling, and it's funny, all the attention. I know you and I have talked about it. I struggled with the attention.
I loved it.
You loved it, and I struggled with it. Like I struggled going on the late. I knew that was the thing to do because everybody talked about the late, but I didn't really want to be on the late.
Switched me on though.
You loved it.
Like even I had for 2 Olympic cycles, I had a documentary crew following me around, but I had such an appreciation of not being important when I was younger, and I could see this is great because I lived the other side, and it just kept me switched on. It kept me switched on even when I was voted team captain in London, and I saw it as a complete honour, and I was like, I can lead by example, like I've done in Osaka, Beijing. Now I'm going to lead in London. Like I have the respect of my peers, and in the event that I was in, they kind of go, this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so...
It makes complete sense, but it's interesting how, like, I would hate that.
Yeah.
You
Being
know?
team soda. I wouldn't hate it because I didn't respect the role. I would have hated it because the pressure.
Just the pressure.
The pressure of it. I would have
When
found
was
that
your
pressurised.
darkest days, Dave?
Well, I think it's kind of...
You've been very public about...
Yeah, like I can relate to everything that you've both spoke about, you know. I think I kind of came into the sport later. So when I kind of had a bit of success, 05, I was 21. I was a little bit older. I then went to England 2022. I retained the title, the European title in 2007. And, you know, the graph was going like this. Everything was hunky-dory. You know, there's, like you said, there's people coming in as sponsors and stuff like that. But Beijing was difficult because, again, I'd been on this kind of... I suppose the progression was good. I was getting faster. But then it was the Olympics. And it was suddenly like, this is the Olympic Games. What we spoke about before, that external noise. Suddenly there was more noise. There was more pressure. There was more expectation. And you go to Beijing and it doesn't happen. It literally just doesn't happen. And I can remember coming back from that like devastated, and, you know, you lose funding because you haven't performed. Sponsors, then suddenly you're getting the phone calls. You're beginning to worry a little bit about the financial side. Okay, what's next year looking like? And I think for a lot of people, like outside of, say, Olympic sports, a lot of deals, a lot of contracts are all 1 year. They're not like any long-term things where,
There's no security.
You know, we're going to back you for 4 years. If you get injured, who cares? You're going to get paid. It's not like that. You get cut.
That messes with your emotions as well.
Of course it does.
Because you can think, when you're a poor athlete, you can think 50 grand is such a huge amount of money. It is, but in the normal world, when a guy's after going to college or he's after doing a trade,
that's the expectation of a wage.
It's a normal wage for him, you know?
Exactly.
Whereas we're like, God, this is unreal.
Yeah. And and when that starts getting pulled from you, you begin to start kind of, you know, looking at the lifestyle choices that you have and how am I going to pay for funding, how am I going to pay for camps and stuff like this. So off Beijing, I had mates that cycled over. Like I had everyone on the bandwagon.
It was ferocious pressure.
There was T-shirts and all this sort of stuff.
There was T-shirts, yeah.
Like, fuck, you know, I can remember just going...
You're a likeable fella though, Dave.
You are? No one made a T-shirt of me.
No, well, there you go. You know,
some voodoo dolls.
Voodoo dolls, yeah, up on the Great Wall. Yeah, like that was hard. Now that was hard, and I think, you know, when you talk about the kind of the setbacks and the struggles, like, if I'm honest, a lot of it probably came later on in my career. I was lucky. Beijing didn't go well, and I can remember coming back and then kind of thinking, you know what, like if I'm going to have a career in this, if I'm going to like push on till I'm 30, I got to start enjoying things. And Charlotte, who was from England, we just started going out that year, and I was like, I wanted a holiday in Ireland because I was sick of travelling. So we went to Inishbofin, and it's funny when you're talking about Youghal and you're on the beach and the water and all that. I was on a beach in Inishbofin looking out to the Atlantic Ocean. I remember that was poignant because I was like, I need to sort my shit out. I need to start enjoying things a little bit better. And I learned an awful lot, and I think, you know, what you
but
referenced.
There's people doing seminars and this is mindfulness.
I know,
it is. It's
And
instinct as well.
honest. And it's like having you know people that you can turn to and be open with. And that was the first time I actually spoke about what had happened. And I didn't perform well in Beijing, and I knew something wasn't right. I knew even going into Beijing itself from a holding camp in Japan, I came out in like mouth ulcers and stuff like that. And again, I know my body, and I knew there and then that something wasn't right. But I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell anyone because I was like, I'm not going to be putting excuses.
You're weak.
But I got tested when I came home, and I had foot and mouth.
It's ridiculous.
I remember thinking, I thought cows only get that. People going, what are you doing? But in one way, it kind of gave me a bit of clarity and a bit of closure on that. And I turned that around. And
that there was a reason as opposed to an excuse.
Yeah. And 2009 then turned out to be arguably my best year. But it goes back to what you were saying. I was a different animal that year.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have as much noise going on. I realised what was important and who was important. And I also realised who were the people that are going to help me. You have an awful lot of kind of clingers on when the going's good.
But isn't that really important? Because you went through that scenario, say after Beijing, I just missed the medal. The next year, and I mentioned this in previous episodes, like a massive anxiety, like really bad anxiety. And then when the World Championships went bad, knowing after going through a phase of being with Robert, Paco, Ilya, all the Polish team, Spanish team, and the environment brilliant, learned so much, and the World Championships went bad, and I ended up getting rid of Korjanowski. And he came to tell me, I met him in the stadium in Berlin after the Worlds. I finished 14th and I was gone. I was going to retire. And he says, Robbie, you know, I've decided to get rid of Paco. I'm not happy with his attitude. Ilya's retired. But he said, Robbie, I will keep you. You were a good boy. You were like my little brother. And I was with Ray Flynn at the time, and I was absolutely terrified. Like, he's such a strong character. And I ended up going, Robert, it's
not working.
It's not working. Like, it's come to the end. Because when I finished 8th in the Olympics, he'd no faith in me. He said, oh, it is good for you. You were a good little Irish puppy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then after that, the boyish kind of bit of crack.
Naive, kind of.
Not even naive, because you could pretend to be naive and a bit of a gomp to survive in that world. No, it's like going, no, I know exactly what way you have to beat to win a medal and what I have to do. And I had to create all of my own team. So brought the messer away, and now I had to become fully accountable. You know, psychologist, nutritionist, video analysis coach, gym coach. It's such a massive team around me, but I had to perform for them.
Yeah.
But it kept me switched on, because maybe I get distracted, just different personalities. No, I had a real clear vision.
But that's probably where, like, you promoted yourself to CEO. You went, I'm the CEO of my own career here now.
Yeah.
Like, the buck stops with me. But collectively, as we're all kind of talking there, like, it's almost like an element of failure is actually a good thing.
Oh,
I know.
You know?
Sure, it's awful that you have to, you know.
But
you know what I'd say about it all day long? So that period that I'd have gone through, you know, where I said where everyone got off the bus, and you're talking about the people who stay in with you. Like, my coach, Sean, always stayed in with me, and he said to me, like, he was one of the few people who sat down with me, and you know, you're one of the people who said it to me, that I had a year to pull my career together.
They're hard realities, though, because...
Yeah, you said it to me, and...
But you need people that can be honest
like Yvonne
with you.
Casson, who was heavily involved with me from 2009 on. Like, when I missed the medal, when I was 4th in London, she says, Rob, you need to win a medal next year, or your career is done. And I'm like... And because I trusted her so much, like,
you could take it.
You could take it.
But you know what happened to me after that, and I think it's also what has really, really helped me since, is I went, like, I will never, ever let myself be as defined who I am as a performance. So the performances, so from then on for me, I had to go very low to feel like the performances were what I did, but not who I was.
Yeah.
And I never, before that point, I was like, it's who I am. And back to, you know, you would say a lot when you're growing up. And when you're growing up, we all have our hang-ups and we all have our different things. And if you can latch on to something that defines you, that seems to make you feel special and make you feel good and confident. But then if that you can't do that thing, or you're doing that thing badly, that impacts you. So after that, I was like, if I go and I get good again, you know, I kept saying, if I can become one of the best in the world again, if I can rise up again, I'll enjoy the rise, and I won't, but I'll know, I'll put it in perspective, I'll put it in context, and I'll do things my own way. And
but I think a lot of that, though, Dorv, when you chat about business, as for all of us, and we could chat loads about what we did after the sport. I think when you sit down at the start of the year and you plan your year, and you understand emotionally and physically the structure, the process of everything up to the championships, and you can envisage what way it's going to be, you can envisage the noise, the stadium, and when you go, if I do everything right, and you have your sponsors in place, and you invest in yourself, and sometimes people, I think they can give out, I don't get funding, I don't get this.
Yeah.
If you were a business and you really believe in your product, you'll have to get a loan off the bank. So if I would manage my year and kind of go, okay, if I do everything, I believe I'm good enough. If I do absolutely everything and I deliver, if I could finish 8th, or I could be second and be disappointed, and nothing matters. So I think coming to that point in your career is that there's a massive freedom in it.
But that's kind of that locus of control. It's internal. You're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
But you have to go through so much to get to that point.
But like, there's a lot of people always looking for the external. Oh, that person's going to do this for me. That person's going to do that for me. But you have to be the driver. And like, very similar. I can remember off the back of 08, Nick Dakin, who was coaching me at the time, turned to me and said, "You've 1 year to run 44 seconds. If you don't run 44, you need to change event. You need to change to 4 hurdles or go to 800."
Okay.
And that was it. And I can remember when he said that. And again, like you said, I respected this person.
And you trusted him.
I trusted him. And I knew he'd been there with other athletes. I was like, okay, yeah, if you tell me to do that, we're going to do it.
But the importance, Dave, like, of somebody who's been there, like that innate trust because you know they have lived it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't put a value on that, I don't think. You know, like I see some coaches there and I see some athletes come through and they never leave the athletes go. And like, even though I got rid of Robert, and I can remember him saying to me in 2008, I walked 79 minutes for 20k. He said, you will never do 50k because you're too distracted, you're not mature enough. And when I got rid of him, when I came back at European Championships, he came back and hugged me and he says, you can win the Olympics. Because I matured, but it was never a personal thing. He was actually right personal. At that time. Yeah. And I wasn't ready for it. But he's still the person I respect most ever. He's an incredible man. You know, but it's...
I think there's so many parts to it and there's so many facets, because I think people are in your career at different stages for different reasons. They have different agendas. And I think that, like, that's something that I had to learn, that people were there for different reasons. And I suppose, you know, with Robert, like, and I would have known Robert a little bit during your career, he only ever really wanted to see you do your best. And that came across in different ways. And I suppose with myself and my coaches, Sean and Terry's coached by husband and wife, they only ever wanted me to reach my level that I was capable of. But with them, they had a huge element of welfare as a person, of my welfare as a person, and they could see how I would have, like, sometimes I'd say it was almost like I was an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert. I don't know, in that, like, I loved a bit of the energy and the crack and the bit of profile and the bit of that, but it would drain my energy.
Oh, yeah.
It would drain my energy, and you are a performing monkey. And then I would need to go away, and I'd need to recharge. I'd need to keep everything tight.
Mobile home down in Youghal.
I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was never going to the mobile home in Youghal with you. And looking back, we might do it this summer though. We should run a retreat for the Paris Olympians in mobile homes in Youghal, and just invite them all there and tell them they can just be part of it. I look back on all of it, and I look at where it brings me to in different places, and I think it was tough. And you'd go, and you know, because all of us have kids now, and we're all involved in athletics in different ways and sport in different ways, and people always want to know, or do I hope my kids will be athletes? And I find it hard to say yes, because
God, well, that's a whole other podcast.
Isn't it though, when you look back, managing the disappointments and the expectation, and like, I suppose moving out of my sports career, like, so when I had all of that clarity, like won an Olympic medal, when I won the World Championships in Moscow, it was the most boring event ever because I was so clinical about what I had to do all year. Brilliant. And then it got a bit scuffled up again. We could chat about that. But even moving on to doing, like when I did Dancing with the Stars after my career, having that same process, I was absolutely delighted that I was progressing. And it was still loads of difficulties. You're thrown out live on TV. But all of the things that we learn from being athletes, when you apply them to other areas of life, it's the same process. So you don't have to win an Olympics or a European title or a world title to feel valued. I think the value comes from you having a good attitude and learning and coming over the upsets and just achieving at your level, and don't worry about no one else. Otherwise you'd have no one doing the sport.
But I think you don't have to get to where you're trying to get to, no matter what you're trying to do, and not take something out of it. So many people come through disappointments and they regret that they did it.
But you know what? I think we could go into another massive topic on this: toxic positivity. So I'd rather have ye being depressed and down and crying on the beach than some dope coming off a race afterwards and going, that didn't work out today, but I'm going to be better tomorrow.
You see that as well.
But that's why, and I think as well, that's why when you talk about being that down, this is why my reaction just ends up being so, because it's so extreme that you're like, it
got better as I got older though, you know.
So the reaction is so visceral and it's so extreme that you're like, how do I actually manage my emotions? But speaking of which, I think it's time for us to wrap it up.
Yeah. I think we'll come back to this one. This is a good one. There's more in this.
That's it. We're gone.